Okay, so this map is not the default map where you can test out how the default Unreal VR controls work. And I had to figure out why some of well, at first, everything about the VR didn't work. But I quickly realized that the reason is because my partner, who is in charge of, he has the source control set up on his side of things. So when my partner had set up the source control with everything that's in here, he hadn't transferred over the project settings, which meant that our VR pawn was in here without any input mappings. So I went through and transferred everything over so that it works on any kind of a system, the way the Unreal default system works. And I also had to figure out, once I got the rest of it working, why the teleport wasn't working. And I realized it's similar to AI. It uses a nav mesh to figure out where it's allowed to teleport. So if I hit P on the keyboard, it shows me where the pawn is allowed to go via teleportation. Now, there is one here, but it's not active right now, and that's intentional. Well, it shows up here, but when you start the game up, you can't teleport to it. Because I have it set up, it only activates, its collision is set to block all until the door has been activated, and then it switches to collision, to the same collision as everything else, and allows the player to teleport in there. Because otherwise, the player can just teleport through the door, which is not what I wanted. Another thing I did is that this ocean here is Tropical Ocean Tool. This one is by James Stone. So it's all his work, and then my partner put it into the scene, but he couldn't get it to work correctly. So I went through the guy's videos and realized my partner had also forgotten to enable generate mesh distance fields. Otherwise it won't look blue and beautiful and there won't be waves and stuff. So we have a weight plate. This is a pressure plate. And you can assign whatever. Let's make it a pedestal. Let's make it the same pedestal as here. Well, I say same. I actually scaled it a little bit. This isn't the same scale. Buried in the sand a little bit. And then the trigger transform. Okay, so under design, there are a few things of interest. For the moment, I'm going to check on test mode. And what this does is it will print the mass that is on top of the plate to the screen. So you have an idea of how heavy each of these objects are when they end up in the trigger box field, when they're on the plate. Now it has an associated event, which is this fella. You create a child blueprint of weight event. In this case, I specifically labeled it Arch Preset 4 because it works specifically with the Arch preset. Because the Arch preset here, it has the left door, right door, and then the hinges. And these are fairly specific to this preset. So I made sure this was specific to this preset. Because it takes the specific doors and it rotates them however much it needs to be done. And it does that using a timeline, which is why it doesn't just click open. And have a slight pop to when it opens. It's just a weight interface, which is this fella here. And this specific one activates nav meshes beyond the door. While this particular example only has the one nav mesh, I have it set up so you could have an array of various nav meshes. So in this particular case, it's associated with this specific structure. So you could pull out another... hold on, I'll have to... So I could pull out another Arch preset 4. Completely different one in the field. And then this one would change. See, the one I pulled out is now called preset 5. So I could change the associated door to preset 5. And now, to test this, I'm going to take a few of these. So I've switched the associated door. And now that one opens instead. So you can use this and tell it, this is the one that I want to be affected by this plate set. This is where you set the nav meshes that are in the area. So in this particular case, the one I want to I want this one to only activate once the doors have opened. So that's the one that I selected in here from the world outliner. And the reason test mode is something I put in here is because the way Unreal's physics system calculates mass is not something you can't just get mass. You have to get a component and then find out the mass of the component. In this case, I have it so any static mesh components, it will be able to get the mass of that component. And then it can add the new mass to the mass that's already been calculated. So this case, it's this mass current is whatever is currently on the pedestal. And it's edited whenever it loses an item. So you put on a rock, it gains, let's say, 3 kilograms. Then you take off the rock, it loses the 3 kilograms. And this keeps track of how much total mass is currently on the plate. Mass needed is this, which the designer can choose. Okay, let's say this plate needs about 9 or so rocks, and so you can raise this to meet your needs. And the test mode allows you to see how much each thing you put on it will weigh, and therefore give you a better idea of what you need to put in the scene or how much mass you should probably make that object need. So when the current mass is greater than or equal to the mass needed that the designer designates, then it will send out a message to the associated event saying, hey, the weight has been achieved. You should do a thing. Because when weight is achieved, oh, this is the, that's the parent class. So, when weight is achieved, it then sends out a message and tells the associated event, hey, you should do something with this information. It's like, okay, I'll open the doors. This here is about whether or not the plate will depress when enough weight has gone onto it. It's currently in an earlier stage. It works as expected, it's just not customizable in the editor yet. Right now, it's just a simple, if it's checked on, it will move a certain amount down after mass needed has been exceeded. It will depress, the plate will shift down. It'll go through, and when it's finished, it will recheck, okay, Because I do have the plan for untriggering. So if the current mass becomes less than what is needed, the plate will have the ability to reset. And so when weight lost, what will it do? In this one's case, it doesn't have a setup for when it's lost. So when conditions are met, it will open and it will stay open. It currently does not have a means to close because I have not yet programmed it to. But it has the ability to set up already within the weight plate. And then the way I go about making my stuff customizable in the editor, for example, the mesh transform, and the trigger boxes transform, is using the construction script. So we have the component as the target, and then an editable variable that will show up over here. So the designer can set it up over here, and it goes through and it's like, okay, we'll set the static mesh to that. Or we'll set the transform to that. We'll set the weight box trigger to what you've set.